Musgrove. Just a couple questions for you. We're talking today about interacting with sharks and photography and being in the water and free diving. So one of the questions we have is, once you're in the water, how do you know what is the appropriate behavior for the diver, specifically what to do and what not to do when you're swimming with sharks?
So for sharks, we have to remember that sharks are predators. They are apex predators in the ocean. And we have to keep in mind that fact because that affects how we act in the water. If we go in the water, we don't want to seem like a shark's prey or food. We want to be almost like the complete opposite. We want to make sure that the shark knows that we're not food and we're not there to be eaten or hunted. So the first step to doing that is actually understanding what their prey looks like or what their prey does. So when it comes to shark prey, they eat dead, dying, or wounded fish or marine wildlife. So that would be either a fish on a fishing line, it will be a turtle that is bleeding or damaged and they're kind of like splashing at the surface, or it will be a fish swimming slowly that may have a sickness or disease. So for us humans, that doesn't mean that, oh, you need to only swim slow in the water, but that does mean that you should have a lot of controlled movement. So when you're in the water, you don't want to do a lot of frailing with your hands like this when there's sharks around, because those movements and those vibrations in the water will attract the shark towards you. And also, if you have fish bait or any marine animal blood or carcasses in the water around you, whether it just be maybe some squid, like squid you use to attract the animal, or fish, or if people are cleaning fish around you and throwing the scraps in the water, those are things that will attract the sharks to wherever you are. So if you're, and those sharks will be in hunting, eating mode because their senses will be heightened by the smell. So if you're trying to avoid that, you don't want to get in the water in those situations. And also you just want to remain calm. Like whenever you enter the water, you don't want to jump in and do like big splashes. You want to be really calm with how you enter the water, nice and quietly, and just swim around, keep your arms close to you, swim around, be vigilant of wherever the sharks are. And yeah, those are the main points on how to interact with sharks or how you interact in the water when you're diving with sharks.
So for people who are swimming in the ocean, when a shark approaches them, can you give them step by step what they should do to ensure that they're safe?
Yeah, so first of all, the chances of just swimming in the ocean and a shark coming like directly towards you those chances are pretty low, first of all, because sharks they rarely want anything to do with us, and they're really afraid of us most of the time, especially if we have nothing to attract them, like there's no sounds, there's no splashes, there's no bait. They don't really have anything to do with us. They would see us off from the distance, realize what we are, and swim away. However, if there was an instant that a shark is swimming towards you or is approaching you while you're in the ocean, you want to do the same things I mentioned before, where you want to stay calm. You don't want to like start swimming away from the shark or like doing the backpedal kicking thing, just because that will trigger the shark to follow you. Because those movements, those vibrations in the water, those splashes, the increased heart rate, these are things that sharks look for in their prey to know if this is something that is weak or hurting or diseased or anything like that. And those are things they lock onto. They say, hey, this is something I may be able to eat or I may be attracted to, because I know usually when an animal or something has this, I usually get a really good meal afterwards. So you want to basically hold your ground, make sure you stay there, keep calm, keep your hands closed. If the shark ever does actually like come towards you, one of the signs you can look out for if the shark is showing any aggression is that their pectoral fins will be down. So usually when sharks are just cruising around, whether it be nurse sharks, hammerhead, tiger sharks, reef sharks, whatever, they're usually cruising around with their pectoral fins straight out to the side, where they do that to help them hydroplane and just cruise across the water. But when their fins go down, this helps them pick up speed in their movement, and this speed allows them to hunt better. So they'll be in a more of a hunting state when their pectoral fins are down. So you want to keep an eye out for that, where when it is like that, then you will know that, okay, the shark is beginning to show aggression, and this is something I need to react accordingly to.
So other than dropping the pectoral fins, what are other signs of aggression, and what should you do if you are in the water with aggressive sharks?
So other signs of an aggressive shark can just be really quick, jerky movements. So it will be the coming in, turning fast, turning back to you, swimming away, coming back to you, and like really, really fast movements. And there sometimes, if you can notice it, their pupils will dilate. So their pupils will dilate for their basically for their eyes to absorb more, like to take in more information, for them to actually see like, okay, I'm in hunting mode, therefore I need to perform at my best so that I can eat. That's something that may be a bit difficult to look out for, but most of the time you will get the vibe once you see the speed, the reaction of the shark, and their fin position. And if that was to happen, the best advice is just to get out the water as fast as you can, as calmly and slowly as you can. And during the whole process, you still want to remember to not make yourself seem like prey. If the shark is getting more aggressive for any reason, and then you begin acting more like prey, whether it be splashing or backpedaling or screaming and all that kind of stuff, you're just doing the opposite of what you're probably trying to accomplish, which is for the shark to relax, for you to get away safely, and everything to be completely calm.
Awesome. So other than sharks, you started in shark diving, but your main focus in your profession right now is underwater photography. Talk to us a little bit about how you got into underwater photography.
Yeah, so underwater photography is obviously my main passion, and I got into underwater photography probably before I even knew I was interested in underwater photography, where I wanted to I always grew up in the ocean. So I grew up here in the Bahamas, going spearfishing with my dad on the weekends, and I lived for the weekend to go spearfishing. I lived for the weekend to go in the ocean, to go on the boat and have fun doing anything underwater. But I didn't have much other friends who were interested in those similar hobbies, where some of them couldn't swim, some of them were afraid of sharks, some of them didn't know how to spearfish. And so for me, I would always leave those amazing experiences for me and my dad, or I'll leave them in the ocean, where I only have so much of like um stories that I can tell, but I had nothing really to show. So that led me to want to share my adventures visually through pictures and videos. So my first camera to help me do that was a GoPro Hero 3 Black, and that's how I got started in underwater photography. I would always carry my GoPro around to whatever adventures I went on underwater, traveling throughout the family islands here in the Bahamas every summer, spearfishing and free diving, then eventually got into scuba diving. And all of that led up to then considering to take the passion and change it into a profession. So from there, straight out of high school, I went to work to a local dive shop that had a underwater photography lab. So every day in the water with professional equipment, learning professional equipment, taking pictures of guests on excursions, scuba diving or snorkeling, shark dives. There'll be film shoot opportunities, celebrities showing up there and taking photos of them, and doing this, shooting photo and video underwater every day repeatedly for the amount of time that I was there. It really helped me hone in my skills and learn just how to develop and get better, where it's just repetition of repetition of repetition. And I think that that played a really big part in my success and understanding underwater photography.
So to date, what is your best underwater memory?
To date, let's see. There's been a lot of good ones. I think my best underwater memory, I believe, was, I think, what I still consider to be hands down my best day diving underwater with for what I wanted to accomplish, like freediving and getting content. And it was actually last year, last year, November or December in Bimini, with diving with the great hammerhead sharks and tiger sharks with this really cool freediver who I know named Stephanie Schult. And me and Stephanie went on this trip with one of our friends, Jason Washington and Ivan Banks, and we went out to a last minute trip to Bimini, and it was incredible conditions out there. We had perfect weather, perfect underwater visibility. We had, the goal was to go there to go diving with the great hammerhead sharks, because that's a hot spot in Bimini where we did a shark dive. So we had bait in the water to attract these sharks to us in order for us to dive with them, interact with them, photograph them, and video record them. And also in the afternoon, we were able to experience the dolphins there, the wild dolphins. These are all wild animals. And the conditions really worked in our favor, where we had an amazing trip. We had amazing dives. And that actually was the first trip that I met Steph, and I saw how Steph was in the water and freediving with sharks and all that kind of stuff. And it was an amazing experience. The synopsis of the film I have on my YouTube channel, and the video is called the Bimini Story. So you can see all about exactly what I'm all excited about right there.
Awesome. I agree. That was probably my top diving trip memory too.
Yeah.
So the next question is, where do you get your inspiration from for your images?
What do you think I get my inspiration from, Steph?
You get them from superheroes, largely.
Yeah, so Steph being one of the underwater models I work with quite often, she knows probably better than anybody how much times I would express what idea or pose or look I'm going for in a piece, in a video, or in a photo. So like a lot of my inspiration comes from comic book superheroes, just because I've been a big fan of comic book superheroes since I was younger. I just like how they portray these heroes to be kind of like the ultimate versions of ourselves. So for me, showing that in photos, showing like what humans are capable of underwater, interacting in the marine field, interacting with marine animals, not to show as if we are the superior being, but more to show that our superpower is that we can coexist well and seamlessly in this environment, and also to show people like what you can be capable of if you really want to do it. You can put your, if you put your mind to something, you can definitely do it. And I like to show that like heroic poses or vibes in my videos and photos, just because I think it's pretty cool. So that's most of my inspiration from my work.
And so something that makes you a little, well, very unique and different compared to some other underwater photographers and videographers is that you're doing 99.9% of these shoots on free diving, breath hold diving, as opposed to scuba diving. Can you explain a little bit why you choose to do most of your work without a tank?
Yeah, so straight off the bat, I think for me, it's just the tanks and the scuba gear is just heavy. And I already have enough heavy equipment to carry around. So like for like lugging around scuba tanks and BCD and regulator and heavy fins and all of that gear, for me, it's a little bit too cumbersome for most of the ideas that I have in mind that I would like to do, because how I shoot and how I work with the underwater models I do if we're shooting recreationally is we will go on a vessel, whether that be a speedboat, a dinghy, a sailboat, offshore. If it's somewhere that we're not even diving in the ocean, maybe we'll be in the cenotes in Mexico. We're going in places where having the least amount of equipment possible is the best. And you get to move around. You're a lot more flexible of what you can do, where you're able to go. And especially when we're interacting with marine animals in the ocean, we try not, well, I try not to use scuba gear when we're doing these different kind of shoots that I'll show some photos later, just because the bubbles from the scuba gear scare away the animals. So the bubbles that are exhaled from our regulators may scare away the sharks that we're trying to get close to take photos. Same thing with the turtles or the rays or the dolphins or the fish. So when we go down free diving, we are basically silent in the water. We go down, no bubbles, no big metallic tank on our back. It's just mask, snorkel, fins, camera, sometimes wetsuit, sometimes weight belt, and you just going to do your thing. You can move across the surface as much as you want. And also for my work, it helps a lot to be able to communicate to whoever I'm working with, which is a lot harder to do when you're down on scuba underwater using sign language or sign hand signals. But in freediving, you can just come up, talk, say whatever you need to say, and arrange, go back down. Come up, talk, do more of that. And it's basically, that helps a lot with the concepts that I have in mind and the models and the subjects who I work with, whether if the human subjects I work with.
So the next question is, what are some of your favorite spots for photography and shark diving, and what time of day is best to do those?
So some of my favorite spots, I think I will show you actually. Let's see. Can I share my screen? Hey Juan, do I have permission to share my screen? Or I can do it to the end.
Yeah, at the bottom, try to click share screen.
Got it.
At the bottom.
Okay. You guys can see?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
All right, so one of my favorite locations for diving with sharks is right here in Nassau, Bahamas, where I am now, actually. And this is a shark site here in Nassau, Bahamas. It's a shallow site. It can go under the name of Shark Arena, Ray of Hope, Heineken Wall. This is all in one general area. And this site is a hotspot for Caribbean reef sharks and nurse sharks, because there's a dive shop here, the one I used to work to, who does a consistent shark feed here almost every day for like the past few years. So these sharks know that they can come to this spot and they can sometimes get a meal. Now, these sharks do not survive and cannot survive from the sole food that they will receive during the shark feeds at the dive shop, just because the morsels that they're given are very small, and it can be anywhere from 10 to 30 Caribbean reef sharks at a time. And even during those shark feeds, there's only about 4 or 5 dominant females that are actually getting any of the bait. So these sharks still have to go and hunt their own food at night in order for them to survive. They still have to go and travel however far they do to actually get food. And we go here sometimes to interact and dive with these animals, and it's a lot of fun to do. So this one is here in Nassau. Another one is in Bimini. So I shot this photo here a few years ago in Bimini, where these are nurse sharks. And Bimini is the one I referenced earlier, that's known for the hammerhead sharks, recently tiger sharks, and always nurse sharks. You can find bull sharks sometimes there also. And it's a really cool interaction there because it's really shallow. We're in about 30 feet of water, just powder white sand, not really any large water marks underwater, and it's pretty cool. I think the last place that, like, for me regarding sharks would be place called Tiger Beach. So Tiger Beach, also here in the Bahamas. All of these locations are in the Bahamas because I believe Bahamas is the best place in the world to dive with sharks. And so this is a photo of freedivers swimming next to one of the largest tiger sharks at Tiger Beach. I believe this is Emma, And you can tell that it's a tiger shark based on its like blunt nose, obviously its girth, and stripes on its back, or stripes slash spots on its back. And Tiger Beach also is a shallow, sandy location in the Bahamas. It has about, I think about, the range is either like 25 to 40 feet, and you can find a range of sharks that's like tiger sharks, hammerhead sharks, bull sharks, reef sharks, lemon sharks, nurse sharks, all in one dive. You can see these sharks around you. Sometimes you may see soaky sharks, black nose sharks. Like you can see a large variety of sharks all in just one area. So those are my favorite places where I like to shark dive.
And if somebody wants to get into this, they want to go and dive with sharks. How do you get into something like that? How do you free dive with tiger sharks or hammerheads?
So the advice that I would give for anybody looking to do shark diving or get into free diving with sharks is to go with an experienced operator and a highly experienced person or operator. So you never really want to do an intro into this world by yourself, just because the risks are high. So you want to go with a dive operator or a person who who is proven that they have the experience and the skill and the talent to do these activities, diving with sharks. And the whole rule basically and the main focus should be safety first. So don't really go into it thinking like, oh, I see this stuff on Instagram or social media, so I know exactly what to do when something happens, and you just go out swimming with dead fish in your hand thinking you're going to be a shark feeder. Like, you will get hurt. That's highly unrecommended. Go with people with reputable people, basically, and operators, and make sure they have all the safety requirements, safety equipment in place. So if you are going with a tow operator, for example, on an excursion, you want to make sure that you understand what the experienced person is telling you to do, and you are aware of the risk, and you are aware of the safety protocol, so that you can be safe.
Awesome. And what is your suggestion or recommendation for anybody who wants to get into underwater photography?
My recommendation for anyone who would like to get into underwater photography is research. A lot of research, a lot of in-water time, a lot of in-water experience. So if you want to get into underwater photography, it's a huge plus to know how to scuba dive. It's a huge plus to also know how to free dive. It's a huge plus just to be comfortable in the water. If you're just swimming around, basically, like you are your first biggest equipment. So before you even worry about what equipment I should buy or what gear I should use, you are a piece of your equipment too. So you have to be able to have the experience and comfort in the water to be able to perform. Where when you add a camera to your hand or a rig, it's just kind of like an extension of your body. So research, in-water practice, experience, and yeah, just time, basically. Just keep practicing.
And in terms of equipment, you talked about that a lot. What do you have to buy a big fancy camera in order to get started?
No, you don't. Not at all. Nowadays, these little action cameras, or even sometimes your phone, can do a lot. And so this connects to what I mentioned about the research. You don't need to get a big Canon DSLR and a Nauticam housing or Cam housing. These are some names of underwater housing companies. Housing is the case that a big camera will go in. You don't need to buy those things just to begin underwater photography, or even just to create fantastic photos. You just need to know what the equipment that you can access, what you can afford, that you have, is capable of learning that equipment and knowing what to do with it. So whether that be just an iPhone and an underwater case and you take that diving with you and you do whatever you want with that, that can work. It can be a GoPro, which I started out using, that could work. Or depending if how and where you're trying to go with it, if you're trying to do it professionally, or just you have the interest in learning the in and outs of bigger cameras, DSLR cameras, pro video cameras, do the research, ask the questions, watch the videos about all of that, and just decide what's best for you. Basically, the equipment that will be best for me and for what I use may not be the same for you, for example.
So talk me through, when you have an idea for an image, talk me through the creative process from the birth of the idea all the way through the final production that you put out there on your website and social media.
Okay, so I think with that, I'll use an example of a photo that I do have with Steph. I think it will explain well my creative process, and I can use this as an example. So I'll share my screen, and I'll use this photo here, which is titled middle C, as in like middle C note on a keyboard, but C is spelled SEA on this one. So for the creative process, usually it would look something like, I know a location. So in this example, I knew of this location in the Bahamas that had this piano sculpture, this piano statue with this mermaid here. And I knew that this location was here. So that's where it starts with. I know where it is. I know where I'm going. And so hooked up with some friends. We had a shoot. We had a pretty good opportunity to go there and have this story covered. And so Steph and I head out to Exuma and be able to go to this location. And I knew that this location was shallow. I knew the concept I had in mind because one, I knew that I had a capable model to be able to do it. That's a big part of the creative process, because you can have the craziest, coolest idea in the world if you want to, but if with a person shooting underwater, but if the person can't do it, your creativity stops there and you're very limited on what you are able to do. So finding the right person to work with, in this example, was Steph. And then I was thinking of, okay, what are the colors that will be shown underwater in this scene? So I know there'll obviously be a lot of bright blues. There will be white. It will be really clear. And so I was thinking of what would be a wardrobe or attire that the human subject should wear that would really like pop, that would really stand out. So white, I was thinking maybe it will be clean, but it'll blend in a lot with the sand where you might lose the person. Same thing with choosing something blue. So I decided to go, and I often decide to go with contrasting colors. So in the ocean, everything is usually a cool color, where there'd be blue or sometimes even like a greenish blue. So the colors I try to go for with the person wearing attire will usually be orange or yellow or red, or something really contrasting, where if the background is dark, then I'll prefer them put them in a light suit. If the background is white, I put them in a dark suit. And so in this case, I knew that yellow would be amazing. And a yellow dress is something also that would really, really stand out. So Steph went on eBay or WhatsApp, Amazon. And she found like one of the cheapest yellow dress, that the color that we were looking for prior to the shoot, and was able to bring that. And it's a piano. So the idea was for her to dive down and play the piano in this yellow dress. And knowing the location and knowing what to expect when I got there helped me visualize this entire picture perfectly from before I even went there, before I even visited the site. So I knew that, okay, this is the location, this is the depth, I know how to get there, I have the resources to get there, I have the model, we have the dress, we have the colors. So you merge all of it together, and then it just comes down to performing it and the repetition of dives. Like Steph remembers the current was very strong there. You can tell like how Steph's hair is blowing. That wasn't initially part of the plan, but adapting to concept you have in mind, like adapting to where you are based on the concept you have in mind plays a huge part in achieving an underwater photograph with especially with human subjects. So we went to this location, but we didn't expect, well, we did actually expect it to be current, but the current was a lot stronger than we expected. So in between dives, since Steph isn't wearing a mask or fins, we'll be holding onto each other at the surface, and I'll be kicking with my fins up current, just trying to keep us over the spot, where if I was to stop kicking, we would have get pushed like far away and then have to swim all the way back, and it would take forever. But we did about, I think like 7 or 8 or 9 dives, like repetitive dives, just to get this one photo. And we also got some video of it too. And I think that's a pretty big, that's the gist of what would go into the pre-production and production of a photograph, similar to this and similar to the style that I've done before.
And then after you get the image and capture the image, then you go home. What % would you say is post-production?
So post-production, I would say is like 45%. Like it's the thing that I feel as if will help to bring out the image that you have in mind, bring out the colors, remove some of the distractions. For me and for the work that I do, I don't use Photoshop, and I use the term Photoshop as in the slang term of adding in a subject or something that wasn't there, or you got it from another photo and put it in there, also called photo compositing. I don't do that for any of my work. Anything that you see shot by me, it was there. It was there. The staff is there, and the photo I showed you, the dress is there, the mermaid's there for real, the piano's there for real. The only things that I usually do when editing my photographs is removing like little particles in the water that might be like a seaweed or a bubble, or sometimes it might be a mass that is laying around in the ground. But the biggest part is just the color correction, making sure that the colors are accurate to what I had in mind and what I would like to show, and making sure they pop. So post-production is a really big part of underwater photography for the work that I do. Depending on how involved you are in underwater photography, you might have no interest or need to edit your photos afterwards because you just want to keep them in your library or on a hard drive, or just keep them for your sake. But for me, doing it professionally, it's a big part of my work, and I enjoy it, even though it sometimes takes a lot of time to do.
So you've taken shark diving, photography, videography, which has been your passion since you were born, basically, and made it into a career, a very successful career. So what advice do you have for people who have a passion similar to that, but they haven't yet made it a career and they're wondering how to do it?
Good question. So I get this question often also. And it really is dependent on you. Like, it's dependent on you, the person. You need to identify what you like to do, what you love to do. Like, write it down, make a note, put a sticky note or something, and identify what you love to do. Like the thing that you would do no matter what's happening around you, whether you're getting paid for it or not getting paid for it, whether you had the time to do it or you didn't have the time to do it. And when you identify that, that'll help you realize the things that you don't like to do. And with that, like specifically in underwater photography or diving and stuff, it's just building up that knowledge of your field, your craft, building up the knowledge of camera equipment, dive sites, learning from other people, networking with other people who are also in the industry who you can learn from, and also who you may be able to help and who you can teach. When it comes to, as I mentioned before, with the dive experience, getting scuba certified, doing a lot of scuba dives, seeing how, like if it's interning at a dive shop, for example, or not interning, but interning or working at a dive shop for an extended period of time, just to learn the ins and outs of what goes into a dive operation. becoming a freediver, becoming a freedive instructor, living on the ocean, working at a camera shop. Like all of these are just different ways that you can learn more about your craft. A lot of those things I mentioned were in-person things, but you can also do a lot just online in front of your computer. Right now, I feel like YouTube is one of the biggest universities that exists, because I feel as if you can learn a lot more from YouTube than a lot of colleges and universities out there. Like the internet is huge, so you could Google almost anything nowadays and learn a ton, and that's a lot. That's has a big part to do with how I got started, where I didn't go to school for what I do. I didn't go to school to learn how to scuba dive. I didn't go to school to learn how to take a photo. Like all of those stuff just came from the practice that I mentioned, in person doing it, in water doing it, and learning from online resources.
Awesome. So you have a pretty strong presence right now on Instagram and YouTube, Facebook, social media platforms. You also have a really strong website. What, for the people who are looking to follow along, what's next for you, Andre? What can they expect to see from your work?
So what's next is a lot of different things. My my work is kind of taking like different routes, but still around the same thing. So recently I've been in front of the camera more than behind the camera, where I've been and I've had some TV show opportunities for big networks like Animal Planet, Nat Geo, and Discovery Channel, and all around the ocean, diving with sharks. Thankfully, and also cool here in the Bahamas. And so I think there'll be a lot more of those opportunities coming up, which I'm pretty interested in seeing where it would go. And from the photography side, you'll obviously see more sharks, and hopefully, and this is one of my goals for 2020, but 2020 took its own route in a way, but to shoot and create more meaningful content with a message. So content that's not just pretty or it's amazing location or it's a cool to see, but more that can depict a really strong message in just one photograph without any words. And that along with photos with a lot more wildlife, a lot more marine wildlife. So whether that be in the Bahamas and out the Bahamas, that's definitely something that's on my to-do list and I'm excited about, and that people can expect more of.
So, Andre, we have a couple of questions from the audience. The first one is obviously if you have any dangerous encounter, something that you say, okay, that was a bad idea, and that came a little bit because the most seen picture that we post from you guys is one that you have a tiger shark and Steph pretty much on a vertical position, pretty much saying hi to each other. A lot of people took it as say goodbye, Steph, but we know Steph is here, so that didn't happen. But that's the one that got the most comments and concerns in some way. Can you elaborate on that one?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna try to pull that up here, just so people know what we're referencing. I think I had it. Oh yeah, Steph Lynn Tiger Shark. That's the file name. So, and so the photo is this one here, where this was the first. This was the this was the first photograph that I've shot of Steph ever. Like from the first moment we met, this was the first time I clicked my shutter on my camera pointing towards Steph. And this is the one that we got, which is a really memorable experience. And with this photo, it wasn't a life or death super danger. Well, it can, but it wasn't a life or death situation. It was more of a, okay, this is a really bad situation. Let's get out of here. And so this is the one that got the most comments and be dangerous, but it wasn't a scary moment. Let me put it that way. It wasn't a scary moment for me. It wasn't a scary moment for Steph, obviously, because we have experience with these animals, and we have experience freediving, interacting with sharks like these, now working together. And so in this experience, what happened was this tiger shark. Well, we were in an area, obviously, that there's a hot spot for sharks. This is one of the spots in Bimini that I mentioned. So we weren't just like out in the blue in powder white sand and a random tiger shark shows up and be like, hey, no. We were in a tiger shark and hammerhead shark hotspot. That's where we intentionally went to photograph and take content with these animals. So that was our will to go there. And thankfully, obviously, we found them. And this tiger shark was just cruising around to the bottom. There was bait in the water, so it was attracted by the bait. And we were at the surface, and tiger shark, well, not tiger sharks, but just sharks in general. And Steph, you can jump in on this story too, because this obviously that's you there. But the tiger shark had come up from the bottom to just curious, like, what is Steph? Or like, what are we doing there? How to, like, curious to know, like, what are we? How might we taste? Why do we look like that? All of these questions. And the only way that the sharks actually will know that is by, not the only way, but one of the ways, and one of the main ways and reasons that the shark would do that is by either biting, bumping, and just getting a closer look to see what their subject is. So they're basically, this shark is basically trying to determine, is Steph prey, or is she friend or foe, or neither? Like, should I just not bother at all? And so what were you thinking in this moment, Steph? Like, I feel as if you have the better angle in this picture.
Yeah, so in this picture, I dove down to meet the shark coming straight off the bottom. And if you look closely at my other hand, at my right hand, I actually had put my hand on its nose to redirect it. And then when it opened its mouth, I was saying, no, sir, like, behave, like, don't be feisty. So I was actually pointing at the shark, kind of putting it in its place. And to be honest, after I redirected that shark, we hung out for another 2 hours in the water, and it was completely passive. There was no, yeah, there you can kind of see me pointing at it. There was no aggression with that shark at all. And this wasn't aggression either. This was just pure curiosity.
Yeah. So that was a pretty cool experience. And the first communication that Steph and I had after surfacing from this very dive was, we just looked at each other, and she was just like, did you get that? And I was just like, yeah, we're going to get along just fine.
That was the start of our friendship.
In a different subject, the people that has been traveling to the Bahamas for a long time, and you, Andre, you have been living there longer than us, but probably Steph and I has been long enough to see changes. My personal experience is that every time I go, I find more damage to the corals. Not a lot of the coloration per se, but damage from improper anchoring, or anchoring on the wrong spots, or wrong techniques of anchoring. You've been there pretty much your whole life. Have you seen changes from us sailors' behavior, improper or proper behavior? And what will be your advice to the crowd that charters boats, not this year, unfortunately, but every year, and they just go, some of them are well trained, some of them are not. What will be your advice in order not to hurt either the corals or the sea life, and just be sure that when you leave, everything is the same way before you arrive?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good point. I think the best thing to do is just to educate yourself. So for the sailors out there who are on their boats, sailing around, motorboats, sailboats, speedboats, whatever you want to do, for them to stay in one place, for a boat to stay in one place, you're either going to marina or you're dropping an anchor. And marinas have limited space, marinas are expensive. You don't even need a marina a lot of the times. A lot of people will anchor their boats. It's really important that you or your captain or your crew or whoever you might be chartering with is aware of which locations are, one, good for anchorage, just for the safety of the boat. Like, you don't want to drag and end up somewhere dangerous. And two, that you're not dropping your anchor on coral reef or in a place that anchors aren't allowed to be dropped. For example, here in the Bahamas, there are certain areas in the land and sea parks that you are supposed to use the set mooring lines there. I think they also have this in the British Virgin Islands, where they have just mooring lines all over the place for people to tie up their boat to, so you don't actually have to drop an anchor. Maybe in the British Virgin Islands, maybe in another place, but I think it's really important for the boaters and the cruisers here who do care about this place and do want to keep their impact, their negative impact, to a very minimum, to just be aware of where you should drop your anchor, or at least for your captain to be aware. And if you're not sure, or if you see something like, okay, this looks like a coral reef, then ask and highly suggest and for them or you not to drop the anchor there, and educate yourself of why you don't want to drop your anchor on the reef. It's not just so you don't have a hard time to pull it up. Like, that's not what it's about. It's so that you don't actually damage the animals and the marine ecosystem that's down there, that helps with the pretty water that you come to visit, that helps with the tourism and the fisheries that you're eating, like the food that you're eating on your plate, that helps to the just the overall environment of the Bahamas and different places in the world, where the neglect that you may give damaging the reef, and that's that small instinct that you may think that nobody around you will see. Those increase over time, and those are consequences that build up, where eventually you have a completely destroyed reef, or you have a loss in a lot of marine animals that used to be in one location, or just overall damage on the whole, where it's not really the point. It shouldn't be the point of someone visiting. Your goal shouldn't be to destroy the place that you visit intentionally for vacation that you love to do. It should be the complete opposite, which is taking care of the place.
Anything else, Steph, that you would like to add, since you are anchoring all the time?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just taking accountability, taking ownership that we are visitors with the ocean. We don't live there. And so we're going into their home, the marine animals' home, and we need to take accountability and responsibility for protecting them and giving a voice to the animals that can't speak for themselves. So for us, it's very easy to take 5 extra minutes to find a good holding sand patch as opposed to dropping on reef. So educate yourself, talk to locals, read the maps, be responsible, and don't contribute to an ecosystem that's already dying. Because
I want to truly thank you both. Andre, it's amazing always to see your work and to listen directly from you.
Thanks,
and we're looking forward to see a lot more from you. Just keep us posted when that National Geographic show goes live, so we will be watching for sure. Take your time.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks, Juan. It was a lot of fun.
You guys, see you soon. Keep diving.
yeah, thank you all. Thank you, Andre.